Richard Fowler, radio show host of The Richard Fowler Show, and Deneen Borelli, president of Conservative Review, outreach director for Freedom Works, and a Fox News contributor, both join us. Thank you very much for your time today.
Hi, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
So, Richard, I'm going to start with you. You have said that Darren Wilson is no hero. Listening to what he had to say in this interview, did anything change your mind?
Nothing changed my mind at all here, Heather, and here's why. I got a chance to read his 4-hour testimony, which there was no cross-examination, by the way. And there's inconsistencies between what he said in that 4-hour testimony and what he said in the interview with George Stephanopoulos last night. In the testimony, he indicates that it seemed as though that Mark Brown was, quote-unquote, charging towards him with his hands up, and then in the interview last night, he then said he didn't have his hands up. So there seems to be some inconsistency, and Darren Wilson seems to be trying to change his story here, but that is neither here nor there this week, because once again, as the Brown family sits down for Thanksgiving, they will not have their son there with them.
Yeah, and our prayers are with all of the families involved in this.
Sure.
But, Deneen, when you hear Richard talk about inconsistencies in what was said, there was a lot of inconsistencies amongst witnesses as well.
You know, you're correct to that point, Heather. And listen, no one wants to see a young person lose their life. This was a tragic situation. But when you look at the fact that the forensic evidence points to the fact that Michael Brown attacked Officer Wilson, he went after his gun, and actually we have the eyewitness accounts as well. So those are the facts that have been played out before the grand jury and the forensic evidence. And Officer was the victim, and he was protecting himself.
And Richard, what about that forensic evidence? I mean, it does seem to prove that Brown was coming back at Officer Wilson. There's blood on his pant leg, blood on the gun. A lot of forensic evidence that points to, in fact, what Officer Wilson said was true.
Well, listen, there's also evidence that indicates, one, that, like I said, Mike Brown had his hands up, and beyond the fact that he had his hands up, the problem is this. There's inconsistency in testimony. There's testimony on both sides, which is why this should have went to a jury of his peers. It should have been to a real trial. There should have been a real trial here, point blank, period. But like I said, that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there today.
The forensic evidence and eyewitness testimony concludes that Michael Brown was in the wrong.
But Richard, please answer that question in reference to the forensic evidence, because that's what I asked you, and that really isn't neither here nor there. I mean, they say forensic evidence does not lie.
Listen, like I said, I think this should have went to a real jury. At the end of the day, even if there was a violent scuffle between the police officer and Michael Brown, it does not justify the 10 shots that were fired, including the shot to the top of the head, right? When a police officer uses his gun, he uses his gun to sort of make sure that you destabilize the witness, or you destabilize the person that's quote-unquote attacking you. And if there was more than 5 or 6 shots that was shot into Mike Brown's body, and that sort of speaks to the fact that there seems to be some inconsistency in his testimony.
Heather, we weren't there. We can only go by what has been reported on this based on the outcome of the jury.
Look at the evidence, Deneen.
And not only that, when you look at how you've had the president on down to Al Sharpton,
don't make this about politics. Let's talk about the evidence.
They have escalated this issue to epic proportions.
Let's not make this about Al Sharpton or Barack Obama. Let's make this about a grieving family and the
on a daily basis in Chicago. Why did this have to be escalated the way that it has?
Why can't we talk about evidence,
Why can't you look at the fact that the grand jury decided?
There's inconsistencies in the evidence, and if this prosecutor wanted to bring homicide charges, he didn't have to go to a grand jury.
You're okay with what Michael Brown did, Richard?
I'm not okay with what Darren Wilson did.
Well, you're not okay with the evidence that's been put before us, which is forensic evidence.
I saw the evidence. Look at the pictures of Darren Wilson. He quote-unquote was hit so hard by a quote-unquote devil, but he did not have a black eye. He did not have...
Okay, but one thing that we do need to do is not talk over each other, because then we can't hear what either one of you are saying. And Richard, you were talking about not politicizing it. Then I'll just ask you, do you think that it was wise for President Obama to come out and speak about this?
President Obama spoke about this as the leader of this country because all across this country, from Seattle to Washington, from Dallas to Chicago, for the past 3 days there's been unrest and there's been millions of individuals protesting, calling for justice. It's the job of the president to speak out for that.
Deneen, hold on one second.
President Obama did, and so did Eric Holder.
No, absolutely not. They spoke to the people who were out there protesting. 20,000 people. They shut down Times Square. They shut down every major expressway in this country because they wanted to demand justice for Michael Michael
Yeah,
Brown.
Okay,
That is
Deneen,
the
you
job
get
of the
the
president
final
to speak
word.
to that.
Al
Deneen,
Sharpton
final word.
called for these
That's not
protests
true.
from across the country.
No, stop.
He
That's
made the
just not
grand
true.
announcement, Richard. Go
Deneen,
check it
that
out.
is not true.
And
Al
again,
Sharpton did not call for this
All right,
arrest.
Richard,
This was you organizing
Richard,
it
you
at
don't think
best.
that's true? Deneen, final word.
This whole thing has been blown out of proportion. Yes, this young man lost his life, but based on the forensic evidence, Officer Wilson was protecting himself.
Deneen, you're just wrong on a lot of issues. You're wrong on all of this.
And we're still going to continue to talk about this later in this hour as well, so stay tuned.
Thanks, Heather.
And definitely thank you both for joining us. And our
Thanks,
prayers,
Heather.
once again, to all of the families.